librarian. And yeah, it's lovely to kind of finish this chapter of my career and introducing them both. Naomi. So Naomi is the architecture, building and planning librarian, and Sarah Charing is the liaison librarian research support, both at the University of Melbourne. So Sarah, who I imagine had much to do with organising this presentation, is liaison librarian, research support. I just said that. Sorry, she really loves historical research and reference management, and recently completed an MPhil to combine those two. And Naomi is the faculty and school librarian at the University of Melbourne with only over 15 years experience in higher education. Naomi specialises in building unique collection projects, aligning them to teaching, research, exhibitions, and other engagement opportunities. So over to you, Naomi.
Thanks, Ruth. And hello to everyone. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know. When Sarah and I were talking about whether or not we should present and why we want to present, we really were just thinking, look, we would love for you to become aware of the collection that we're going to talk about. There's multiple things we could talk about with this collection, but probably it's better that we thought what we'd do is structure it just as it being a playing session, and I'll introduce you to it in a second. If I don't cover any of the topics that I think I should touch on, but would like to discuss it further, like around object-based learning, around Omica, around how you do 3D digitisation projects, how you work with objects in a library, just get in contact. We'd love to chat. Sarah and I have lots of experience and just like to chat about things. So if you ever want to chat, please do. Look, when I'll show you, look, I'll put this link in the chat of where we're going to first of all. Hang on. Sorry, it's going to be a little bit chaotic because Sarah was going to do most of the driving, and so I'm going to have to drive and talk. But I'm going to start you off on the website that shows the collection, and then we'll go into the collection on the 3D platform. So if you want to follow along. If you want to go ahead and just explore by yourself, please do. So the link that I've sent you to is to the Aka Hutch website, and let's start from there. I might share my screen from now. So this is the website which showcases the collection, and it's the entry point into the collection. So the collection is 300 plus objects and still growing, unfortunately. They are building heritage materials. So they are objects that don't look like much. Whenever we have to go to the cupboards and get out the objects, the academics come past and will make jokes about how it's rubbish and can we just chuck it out. But actually, the devil in the detail for these objects, even though they might be tiny objects or really quite insignificant looking things, it's what they represent in terms of the history of the built environment and in construction history in Australia that really makes it interesting. So for this collection, unlike any other digitisation project we've done, we actually have access to the person who collected the material. And when we were thinking about why we wanted to do it was because we'd seen it being used in teaching and learning. And Miles was trying to give a class talking about these materials. And it was just before COVID. The class size had gone from being 30 students to being over 100 students, and trying to get 100 students to engage with these objects just wasn't possible. So we decided that we really needed to think about a way to actually make them available to students. And the important thing is, in this particular discipline, a lot of it is around object-based learning, so looking at the object and questioning it. And we thought that just having the photographs wasn't enough, so we decided to do a 3D scanning project. So this is the website that shows you what the collection is. It's put into 3 parts. So the first part is discover the collection, and it shows you the 5 themes of the collection. So there's bricks, lime, cement, plaster, decorative, finishes, roofing, and ironmongery. And if I go into one of them, what we've given is a sample of the 3D objects. and the ability to go straight to the 3D objects. And then also, because it's only a small sample that we've been able to digitise so far in 3D, we've got the whole collection on Omica. And we've also pulled out a lot of the metadata around there. So if we wanted to go and actually have a look at the full lot of roofing materials, this takes us to an Omica website that we've put together that has all the photographs, all the metadata and the details of the collection. But obviously, until we can make all the 3D objects, this will be the working website that shows most of the materials. I'll go back. And because we have access to Miles, what we decided was really to make sense of this collection, the best thing to do is to make videos of Miles talking about the collection and why it's important and how you use it in investigating building materials and the heritage of buildings. So May Hare here, who was one of the project partners, she interviewed Miles not only to give a snapshot of or a discussion about the collection, but how you actually investigate it, and then down to particular parts of looking at bricks and stuff like that. So when they talk through the bricks, they talk through how the fingerprints are important or how the fogs are important in analysing what the bricks are. And it goes down to particular, the nails one is very funny. It's one of my favourites because there's a whole subset of nail nerds out there and they send Miles stuff, and he talks a bit about that one. And the roofing, I quite like the roofing one as well. It talks about the development of roofing from bark huts all the way through to current day roofing. And then finally, because I'll move on to the website in just a second and give you guys a chance to play. Because this project was so unique for us, we thought we'd talk a little bit about how we actually went about it. So we've got 4 parts about the background of the project. So we've got interviews with Miles about what his take on the project was and what he hopes that the use of the collection could be in the future. We have side projects, which is Ben and Belinda, who did the photogrammetry, and they're talking about how the technical challenges, but also the conceptual possibilities of this project. And then Mayhair's talking about the metadata and about how to actually communicate what's going on in linking the objects to Miles's videos. And then there's one from us, which is actually Sarah, Sophie and me, and we're talking about the library's role on this. Initially, we hadn't thought to do it, but librarians don't think about themselves as project partners. So it was funny being told by everyone else that no, we actually had to make a video. Yeah, so there's us talking about what it's like to do a digitisation project and why it was important to do this one. So this is the website that people can go to actually contextualise the objects. But what I'm going to do now is take you into Pedestal. I'll put this link in the chat. If I can. Sorry, just bear with me while I get into the chat. So this is where I'd like you all to either join with me or to go and do whatever you'd like to do and explore this collection. So these are the first 50 objects that we've had digitised. There is the next 50 that are being processed at the moment. And what we've done is we put it on the Pedestal platform because we think the Pedestal is the easiest way in for anyone to actually have a look at a 3D object and to think about it and to question it and play with it. So the objects, you have the view and it tells you a little bit about what these ones are. So here's the Murphy's vent, and this is the most recent one. I've got some nails, some corrugated sheeting, an iron bracket, some master rooftop. This one's really interesting because it's actually 2 bits that were scanned separately and put together. So maybe let's go into this one here and I'll show you what it looks like. And the reason why we chose Pedestal and not Sketchfab or any of the other 3D hosting places is because the tools here, which has been designed by group in Macquarie University, gives people a really simple way to engage with the objects. So the information one was the one that we've had the most contribution to, because what we needed to do was give contextual information about what this object is. So you'll see we've got the title, and then we have the link to the classification number that we've given it. We've given it a description. Now, this is only a brief description about what the object is. And we've given it the categories. We chose a few categories that we thought were important for building heritage materials. So you'll see that it's in the roofing category. It's made of terracotta. We've given the dimensions. The dimensions are really important because the scale of these things, I mean, they're small for a 3D object that the faculty normally works with, because normally our faculty works with entire buildings or sites, right? But now we're talking about much, much smaller objects. And so we get down to the millimetres really for these ones. We did talk about having weight, because the weight of some things we thought was important when we do an object-based learning class. The ability to pick things up and look at an object and think about it is something that, you know, the tactility of it sets off a lot of questions. We were trying to decide if the weight was important. We had a lot of discussion about it, but Miles came in the end and said, look, no, just don't bother about it. So we haven't captured weight. The maker's mark, which is the next one, this one here is really important in identifying the history of an object. So the maker's mark in all the tiles, originally these Marseille tiles came from France, and they had stuff like bees on them and stuff like that. But as it came into Australia, and it actually went across the world, these tiles, and then they had to get made locally. When they were made locally, there's lots of subtle changes, and often the way you distinguish where the tiles come from is through that little picture that they put on it. So this one here has a kangaroo. I'll be a turtle sometimes. There's all sorts of little things. So it's those kind of little details in the objects that tells you where it's come from and how it's been made, and can give you the ability to date it. The condition was fair, and then we had a bit of a condition description, and this becomes more important for some objects or not, because often there's pieces missing, or it had been gone through some kind of construction thing, and it's marked down there. So here we've got the link back to the full metadata description. That goes back to the Omeka website. So if people want to read all the content, they can. Now this next bit in the information button is really, it's our way of trying to deal with the IP of the collection, because we really need to tell you about why the collection's been collected, but also because we're now moving into a 3D realm, you have to look at the IP of the person who's created the 3D object. So we found a way that we could credit Ben and Belinda inside projects. We looked at how the metadata could be done. And so this is our attempt to try and acknowledge everyone that's gone into creating this collection. And this one here, the final bit, this is a standard bit of pedestal, so it does have to have a username, so that's us, and that author is the faculty. But we were able to put in a licensing agreement, and that's really important because it's an open access collection. We wanted to give Miles the ability to choose which Creative Commons license to make it available with, and then anyone can download the files. So we're hoping that by putting it on pedestal and making it as easy to engage with, that people will go and use it in really unexpected ways, download the files and create something else with it. And that's why I thought it would be really nice to present to you guys, because you might have other uses for this collection. You may see a whole another way to use one of these objects or all these objects, and we would love for that to happen. Okay. I will go back to, because I'll cover the information and then I'll show you a few things about what actually pedestal can do. So if I go into another object, which one? I might do this bit of metal, because I think it it does some nice things when you actually have a look at it. So when you go into pedestal, obviously you can zoom in by using your mouse, and that's all fairly intuitive. You can rotate it around using your mouse. And when an object goes into when it becomes a 3D object, often it actually becomes quite a different object. I'll show you a shingle later on. When that got transformed into a 3D object, it was just like, oh, there's a little nail sticking out, and it was quite mind-blowing. So when I look at an object, I want to be able to interrogate. I want to be able to, I want people to be able to do whatever they want to actually have a look at and to think about it. So pedestal, what it does is it has a whole lot of tools that you can change different aspects to measuring, have a look at it that way. Let me zoom out and I'll show you pedestals now giving me the measurements of this object. So it does a lot of neat little things very quickly. I'm not the best at driving this. So it gives you opportunities to move things or to transform them. In the surface, this one I'm not 100% certain like why you'd need to move the smoothness, but I presume that there's like lots and lots of reasons. When I talk to Michael and the other people who use it, they play around a lot with, you know, whether or not you can, you know, change the look and the feel, and that gives you another way to actually look at the objects. And so it just has all these neat little features that I don't know what someone who's looking at these objects is going to want to do. So with the tools and pedestal, I think it just gives them lots of abilities and ways to play. Set the surface. Oh, this is taking it back to the blank surface before they're put on the layers on top. And Michael assures me this is one of the most popular features of pedestal, is to take off all that kind of noise, is what he calls it, over the top, that makes it look like a real object. And this gets back to like the 3D photogrammetry detail. Actually, before I go to lighting, I need to go back to the surface. No. Hang on, I'll have to go back completely because I don't know how to play 100%. Let me go back in again and bring it back as it normally would. Because the bit I like most about this object is looking at in the lighting. So if I scroll in, you'll see that at the moment there's no lighting. If I put it on 3-point lighting, it just slightly changes it and makes everything look a bit more vivid. And you can really see the nodules of the cement that's poking out through the bits of metal. And then if I put on the spotlight, you'll see here I can change, and it really gives you a way to actually look at the object and look at the real detail of the object. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. Depending on what the object is, the ability to actually, you know, zoom in, look at the detail and examine it with the light is quite amazing. Actually, I might go back to another object because I think there's so many nice objects and it's good to have a look around. Let's go. The brickmaker sandal is Sophie's favourite object in this collection. So the brickmaker sandal is in timber and with bits of metal. And it's one that the people, when they were making bricks and having to go near the kiln, they put this over their shoes. And so it's part of the collection. It's probably the most it's the most well loved by Sophie. I'm not 100% sure why she loves it so much, but she loves it. And Eric, who's currently designing the exhibition that's going to go in the library around it, he thought, when pulling together the exhibition, he thought he would actually do a 3D print of this model as a tiny little 3D object. So we're going to see how that looks when he prints it. But when you look at an object, so you can see, you can zoom in here, And what's interesting is that you can measure things up. So if I wanted to see actually how big something was, I can start a pin here and I can finish it where it is, and it tells me, oh, I'm in meters. Hang on, let me move back to millimeters. So you can, maybe I'll put in centimeters, 9.35 centimeters. So if I wanted to go and look at particular parts of the objects and measure it up, I can do. And I think that's one of the things that in our faculty the students will probably do a lot of, is measuring up things and trying to compute and figure out how things are put together. But hopefully other people have other reasons to use it. And then I'm just going to show one more object, because I think this one here really does show the difference of when an object is in real life and when it becomes 3D. Now this one is Ben Waters' favourite object that he scanned. So, and why he loves it is because it's a piece of wallpaper, and the idea of trying to scan a piece of wallpaper just pretty much blew his mind. But what happens is when you scan the wallpaper, because it's been ripped off the wall, you have all the layers behind it of the old wallpaper, and it really becomes quite a different thing looking at it in 3D and knowing that all those textures are there. So he was really proud that actually when they scanned it, they could get that level of detail of all the paper that's behind. And you'll see that little bit of paper here curling up. I think it's quite fascinating that in a 3D scanning process, you can get that level of detail. So when you look at the wallpaper front on, you don't really quite realise just how incredible it is as a 3D object. It's only once you rotate it and you start looking at it that you kind of get a sense of what the object is. Right, I think pretty much done, Ruth, unless you have
Wonderful.
questions.
That was incredible. I have so many questions. But before we get to my questions, we've had a question from Mona Library about how these are actually scanned. So I thought we might start there, and then we'll see how the voice lasts. And
sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question. How they scan. So it's photogrammetry. It was everything is done on the fly in our library. We never actually, we don't have it. We basically set up in the staff meeting room. We were able to hire, we have a Fab Lab office with us, and so they had some materials. I'm just going to see if I can find a picture of Ben doing the scanning. Hang on. I'm going to share the screen. So here's Ben doing the scanning here. And so basically in the corner of our staff meeting room, we had a little table. They have this fantastic Lazy Susan with printed barcodes on it. And so the camera just takes lots and lots of photos and rotates around, and then they move the object around. So basically they need to follow a pattern of moving the object a certain way and then just rotating it around, and that's how they pull it all together. The lights, I think, were Ben's, and the camera's definitely Ben's. And this is all the kind of processing that goes behind the scenes. But if you want to watch the video and then ask questions, like I can talk you through it more, but Ben goes through quite a lot about what the actual process is like. Belinda, who was his partner in the project, she's more of a librarian, and she did not want to be videoed. She did not want to, but she was also very instrumental in it.
Yeah, fascinating. What I was, I guess, most drawn to is, when you think about a digitization of objects, you're like, oh, and for people who are obsessed with materials, you're like, oh, it's not going to be the same. But then it's like this entirely new, beautiful thing. And like, yeah, it also offers you like, my eyesight's quite good, but like you can look at things at a level that you would never be able to do in a sustainable way. Everyone's able to look at it with the same, I guess, parameters, and just those lighting options. I was like, even if you're looking at an object in real life, you never have the option, oh, I'd like the light from this side, or I'd like, and also that removing of color allows you to more fully engage with the surface. Yeah, I guess, has that been what other people have been thinking through that as well? Or yeah, curious.
Yeah, I think it's too soon because we missed putting it out for this semester's teaching just by a couple of weeks. So I'm not sure if it actually got used in teaching. It's next semester that I think it'll be used in teaching around the faculty. But definitely, like, I know that with Michael talking, he's the one that created Pedestal. It's our ability to strip back and actually look at the surface texture that is the most used bit, he thinks, in Pedestal. And when I talk to my colleagues, because I've got colleagues across the university who use Pedestal for different reasons, the dentistry ones, they've got little scans of teeth in there. And so they do the measurements and all that, and they look at the cavities and stuff like that, but stripping it back does allow them to see the texture of the tooth a lot more.